Matthew chapter 5, 11. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Shall we pray? Lord, the God of righteousness and truth, grant to our Governor General, Dame Margaret Pinley, and her government, to members of Parliament, and all in positions of responsibility, the guidance of your Spirit. May they never lead the nation wrongly through love of power, desire to please, or unworthy ideals, but laying aside all private interest and prejudices, keep in mind their responsibility to seek to improve the condition of all beings. So may your kingdom come, and your name be hallowed. Praying together the prayer Jesus taught his disciples to pray, say, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Good morning, honorable members. Before we begin, we have a special grouping visiting with us this morning in the gallery. I would like to recognize them at this time. They are from the Moving Forward Contractors Association. I'd like to recognize Mr. Floyd Walker, Mr. Paul Willie, Mr. Wellington Smith, Mr. Carlton Morley, Victoria Burrows, and Clifford Morley. Can you all stand for us so that we can see who you are? Thank you very much. Also, at this time, the chair would extend an opportunity to the member for Central and South Eleuthera to bring particular remark.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to congratulate a few students in my constituency that I overlooked last week. Mr. Speaker, there's a young man from the Roxanne Preston H. High School just recently has won the National Senior category for the best flower in the culinary competition here in New Providence. Mr. Speaker, also, we have another winner, and she has also won the position which she took part in. And, Mr. Speaker, as I stand here, I want to also congratulate Randall Davis from Samuel Gray All-Age School, and also the Junior Cupcake War Toy Place winner, Christine Ingram, and Michael Cartwright from Preston Age High School. Ms. Tamika Remming, Preston Age High School as well, who was the coach. Ms. Finley from the Samuel Gray All-Age School as well. Mr. Speaker, I just want to congratulate those students and their parents and the staff of Preston Age who made it possible that our kids were able to come to a national competition and bring the cup back to the island of Eleuthera. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable members, when the business of the House suspended, the Honorable Member, the floor had been reserved for the Honorable Member for Kalani. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There's so much stuff here. Oh, he's a big prince, man. I don't. This is not as big. This is not as large as it looks. I use bigger print. I am not as young as you chaps, and therefore my eyes are not as good as yours. But, Mr. Speaker, before I start, I'd like to praise and thank the Almighty God for giving me the opportunity to be here and guiding my life and bringing me this far. And also thank the Almighty God for protecting and looking after the Bahamas, and may He continue to do so. I'd also like to extend condolence, Mr. Speaker, to the family of Mr. Noel Cartwright, who was recently killed in my constituency, very near my home. And I want to inform the public that the police have become even more aggressive in stopping cars for inspection, investigations, etc. And we don't want to hear any noise about my good son. Your son is good while in your house, but he starts his badness after he leaves. And Mr. Speaker, tough times calls for tough measures. Yes. And it's essential that we put an end to these criminals who are on our streets and wreaking havoc within our society, which can have great impact on our economy. But before I get into my debate, Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize 4 young ladies, and you would hear more about them as I advance through my debate. But these young ladies are the top students at the University of Bahamas, whom I would have met personally, spoken to them. And these are young ladies who would be offered jobs within the government sector and would be part of our public service transformation. And they were the top students graduating from the University of Bahamas in business, economics, and finance. And they are Angelique Butler, Bachelor of Science, Bachelor of Business Administration and Finance. You kindly stand so that the entire Bahamas can see our future.
All right.
Ms. Gail Simonet, Bachelor of Business Administration, Economics, and Finance. Bridget McPhee, Bachelor of Business Administration, Economics, and Finance. Ashley Murray, Bachelor of Business Administration, Economics, and Finance. Mr. Speaker, I refer to them because they were the top graduates this year from the University of Bahamas. And as I was introduced to these individuals, I was somewhat amazed that all were females. And I guess, Mr. Speaker, as we move forward, we probably would have to introduce some form of affirmative action to protect our men. So that we would have not just 4 females, but at least 1 male as we move forward. But these are individuals who would be given a 1-year contract with the Ministry of Finance at top salary, because we would embark on a 10-year public service, public sector reform and transformation. And every year, we would identify individuals who can contribute to the various different ministries, top students not only from University of Bahamas, but top students from other American universities who are Bahamians, would be recruited for 1 year, paid top dollars, and would be sent off for further training for a master's degree in that particular entity, fully paid by the government, so that at the end of 10 years, Mr. Speaker, we would help to uplift and improve our public sector. I want the Leader of the Opposition to note, in case he did not hear me well, I said a 10-year plan, which means I have 9 more years to go. What that would mean is that because you and I are getting up in age, you would go with me.
Chester, you going with me?
So your dream would not materialize. Because in 2027, I leave. In 2027, we will hold hands together in our departure. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of Galani to offer my contribution to the debate on the 2018-2019 national budget. This budget provides hope and opportunity for new homeowners, entrepreneurs, young people over the hill communities, and hope and opportunity for our future. The inspiration for my government and for this budget is to leave behind a better, more secure, safer, and prosperous country. Our vision and mission is to provide opportunity and hope for current and future generations. Our vision, Mr. Speaker, is taking shape. During last year's election campaign, the FNM pledged to introduce free tuition for qualifying young people at the University of the Bahamas. I wish to announce at the outset that beginning September 2019, all full-time Bahamian students who meet certain entry requirements at UB will receive free tuition. The details of these requirements will be announced. Students will have to maintain a minimum GPA to maintain their grant. This requirement will also be announced. This major investment in education will help scores of young people to realize their dreams as we build a more equitable society. While talent is evenly distributed in any population, opportunity, Mr. Speaker, is not. And this government will ensure equal opportunity for all of our citizens, regardless from whence they came, politics, or financial background. These new opportunity grants are a major national investment that will help scores of parents unable to afford the cost of tuition at the University of Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I have traveled the length and breadth of our Bahama land, most southern shores to the most northern. And I've listened to the cries of the Bahamian people, the parents, who send their children here to attend our University of Bahamas. And they are most concerned about the safety of their children. They are concerned about the accommodation provided or situation in which their children live. And they are most stressed, Mr. Speaker. Some work extremely hard, 2 jobs if they could find 2 jobs, to ensure that they can muscle up the extra funds or fees to send to their children so that they can have some form of accommodation. Because many Family Island students, Mr. Speaker, cannot afford housing in New Providence, qualifying students from the Family Islands will be afforded $500 per month for an accommodation allowance. UB will maintain a proper housing register to ensure that homes in which students reside meet safety and other requirements. This new register of homes will increase housing opportunities for students. The allowance will be paid directly to qualifying homeowners. Mr. Speaker, what this does, it allows individuals, in some cases, homes may have 1 or 2 parents, all the children off. It will allow their home to become a part of the room inventory and thus receiving $500 for rental of a particular room, and whatever difference on top of that the student would deal with. But it allows to help the common Bahamian. But this does not exclude students choosing apartments or sharing facilities. I also wish to announce that all Bahamian students who qualify to attend BTVI will be granted free tuition beginning this September 2018. To maintain this tuition, Mr. Speaker, they will have to meet certain ongoing requirements which will be announced. This new initiative will help to build a more skilled and productive workforce. My government, Mr. Speaker, is also pleased that we are able to fulfill a pledge to remove VAT from medicine and from bread basket items. Mr. Speaker, given the long, hot summer ahead, BPL has agreed to a reconnection program for disconnected customers. To be reconnected, Mr. Speaker, it's essential because throughout our Bahamaland, there are approximately 3,000 individuals whose homes lights are off, and our children are living in such conditions. We are attempting to turn those lights off. So to be connected, a customer must pay 25% of their outstanding balance. And I note that in the past, BPL had done something like this. However, they were required to pay 50%. Customers must maintain monthly payments of current bills, plus 10% of their arrears, which should allow full repayment in 11 months. And I note BPL usually seek to have arrears repaid within 6 months, but that was a policy of the FNM, not the former government. Customers must also agree, Mr. Speaker, to sign a payment plan. Mr. Speaker, this would certainly show that we are looking after the people. Mm-hmm. After all,
and you give them VAT also.
After all, Mr. Speaker, this is the people's time. Mr. Speaker, I wish to provide an update on the government's ambitious affordable housing program. Our vision is to create a minimum of 1 subdivision per year over the next 10 years, thus giving each Bahamian an opportunity to own and purchase land with all infrastructure, light, water, cable, etc., roads, at a cost less than $30,000. The first islands to be a part of this program, Mr. Speaker, are New Providence, Andros, Abaco, Exuma, and San Salvador.
You get some.
Now,
The people start.
I intentionally said less than 30,000 because it may not be unusual for individuals to purchase property for 10 or 12,000. After all, the land is the people's land, and this is the people's land. Mr. Speaker, we must ensure that each and every Bahamian has an opportunity to own land and a home in this country. And because a large number of Bahamians are under the age of 35, 60% of our population are under the age of 35. A percentage of lots will be geared towards those 35-year-olds and younger.
Oh, yeah. Yep, give them a start in life.
What we're saying is we will give our young people a start in life.
Yes.
Those young ladies
When they need it.
who were taught at University of Bahamas,
Yep.
land will be preserved so that they can build their dream homes.
Oh, yeah.
You see, Mr. Speaker, a lot of people, I purchased land in excess of $100,000, but I've been blessed. I've been blessed. And I've been taught that once you have, you must also create opportunities for others or try to help others.
Yes, sir.
And I thank God for giving me that opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I wish to clarify a matter in which there seems to be some confusion. Though I want to encourage qualifying public officers to apply for land in this program is not restricted to public officers. This program is for all Bahamians.
Yes.
And any Bahamian who is interested in this program and who meets the qualifications are eligible to apply, including single mothers and moderate income families. Let me repeat, this program is not limited to public officers. Phase 2 of this policy, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I should point out also that these government subdivisions would allow these young people to build their homes duty-free. Be looking after young people, Mr. Speaker. Pray if you and I can do that before we leave. But we leave together. No. These are young people, man. They stay and you and I going. See, we got on glasses, you look at them, they ain't got on none. This component, Mr. Speaker, phase 2 of this policy, the commercial component, will be legislated next year. This component will afford Bahamians the opportunity to purchase land at a minimal cost for bed and breakfast hotels, helping more Bahamians to own boutiques and small hotels and to become involved in our primary industry. Mr. Speaker, this is important because especially in the family islands, and it's happening here also, but especially in the family islands, many of our foreign guests and residents are building second homes. And these second homes become a part of hotel inventory where rooms are rented. Now, as a result of that, Bahamians are losing their own country. We foresee that if nothing is done within the next 10 to 20 years, the room inventory in the family islands, bed, breakfast, etc., will be owned by foreigners and Bahamians will be displaced. But we are a futuristic government. We look and anticipate what may possibly happen and subsequently try to prevent it from happening so as to ensure that Bahamians are protected. So, Mr. Speaker, what this would do, we are in the process, our land and survey department are in the process of surveying and identifying land that we deem important for development of bed, breakfast hotels, boutiques, etc. These land will be zoned and subsequently sold to Bahamians at reduced rate with all the infrastructure so that Bahamians moving forward will own our boutique hotels. But, Mr. Speaker, we also want to stimulate the local economy. And bed and breakfast hotels, as the name suggests, individuals sell breakfast. If all the breakfast items, and BAIC would love this, if all the breakfast items are strictly Bahamian, then they will be incentivized even further. Remember, Mr. Speaker, they again, like the residential component, would be able to build their hotel duty-free. As business start to grow, invariably they would request to provide lunch. And if all the lunch are Bahamian product grown, then they would be further incentivized. Mr. Speaker, what this would do is stimulate the local economy because individuals know that they have an outlet. And the hotel know that if they purchased all Bahamian items, then they are incentivized. But if they put one non-Bahamian item on that menu, they lose that incentive because I am looking after Bahamians first. Now, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate that the member for Abaco is off now at conference. But there was a problem at Crossing Rock. Now, I didn't have any corned beef this morning, believe me. I didn't have any. I like it with rice, not with grits. I don't think rice is a breakfast item. Crossing Rocks, Mr. Speaker. The residents in Abaco Crossing Rocks, in 1999, they were devastated by Hurricane Floyd. As a result of that, the government had given them permission to build more inland, and the government had promised that they would sell the land to them at rock bottom price, $1,000, giving them an opportunity to start their homes. Many individuals would have taken advantage of the situation because their homes would have been destroyed on the coast. And they subsequently had moved in the areas designated by the government. However, Mr. Speaker, their land was never regularized. So I want to assure those individuals that before December, their land would be regularized, and the promise that was made to them at a price of $1,000, in some instances $500, we would honor that commitment, and therefore they can receive their land for $500. That was promised. The member has always asked, are we moving away from our policy of building homes? Mr. Speaker, I want to point out some of the problems you face with building homes. I want to point out some of the problems. In Spring City, a subdivision created by the government, Spring City in Abaco, contractors, Mr. Speaker, were paid for building homes. In some instances, they had received up to $100,000, and only the retention money was withheld. But they had received. Mr. Speaker, individuals who had received our money up to $100,000, this is how those homes are.
That's now?
Right now. This is the date. They are incomplete. Haven't received our money, the people's money, and I am not, and have not, put this here, so Mr. Speaker, those individuals had received up to $100,000 of the people's money, with only the retention money being held back, and this is the state of those homes. So, Mr. Speaker, this government does not tolerate nonsense. That's the people's money. And therefore, Those individuals, I am giving their names to the Minister of Housing so that he can investigate, thorough investigation. And I am also providing a copy to the Minister of Legal Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the idea is those individuals must be prosecuted for the people's money.
Yep.
And, Mr. Speaker, they will also be placed on the stop list in terms of doing government's job until our money is returned. Now, I have a copy here for the Minister of Works, but the Minister of Works is not here, and I am told that I am acting Minister of Works. And therefore, I put the ministry on notice that at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, I will be there in the capacity of acting Minister of Works to see those names, and they will be placed on the stop list. They will not do any government job until they're completed. I didn't call the names. I did not call the names. The names are totally irrelevant to me. But I'm sending out a notice. I ain't calling no names. I'm sending out a notice to all those who believe that they can receive government's money and do not produce.
That's the main point.
That is completed. That don't happen anymore. You produce, or you will be put on a stop list, and you will never, until you pay the money back, be given any government job. You sure you want to go down that road? He's your man, you know. Anyhow, Mr. Speaker, let me carry on. Let me carry on. You're trying to get me. You're trying to get me in trouble. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Prime Minister will issue a request for proposal for a land audit to be executed by a Bahamian service provider or a Bahamian service provider in conjunction with an international firm. The comprehensive land investigation and audit will be conducted to establish land that is owned or leased by the government of the Bahamas. The information in respect of Crown lands will be used in the determination of outstanding land applications at the Department of Lands and Surveys. The findings will be used as a first step to develop a modern land registry in our Bahamas. The audit seeks to establish what government-owned land has been directed for use by others, either in the form of leaseholds, licenses, authorizations, joint ventures, and contractual obligations. It seeks to establish what government-owned land is presently under commitments to be alienated either via grant, leaseholds, or other means which has not yet been perfected. It seeks to establish, Mr. Speaker, what government-owned land is presently under consideration to be divested either via grant, leaseholds, or other means which has not yet been perfected. And it also seeks to establish that government-owned land or leased-out land is being used for its agreed purpose. Mr. Speaker, this is important for us to do the audit. It is unfair in our society where 2, 3, 4 individuals may have an excess of 1,000 or more acres of land, promising to do certain things and never do it. While our young people are looking for land to try and build or farm, and they can't receive it. because they are not a member of the who is who. This is unfair. And we are identifying those lands, and we are taking those lands back. The land will be given to the people so that the people can use for investment opportunity and housing opportunity, but not so that our economy in our country can grow, but not to be, as I say in Bahamian terminology, hog up by certain individuals on the basis of speculation. Mr. Speaker, this budget redirects the disastrous course we were on. It redirects the disastrous course we were on because of the disastrous financial management, reckless misfeasance, and malfeasance of the PLP. We are getting our financial house in order by addressing massive annual deficits and long-term debt. Cleaning up our financial mess will mean a healthier and more productive economy in which we will have the fiscal and budgetary resources and room to invest even more in our people. This, Mr. Speaker, is a responsible and transparent budget with investments in education and training, entrepreneurship, infrastructure, healthcare, social development, crime prevention, and other investments in our people. Unlike former PLP budgets, there are no tricks and gimmicks, no smoke and mirrors. No games in this budget, Mr. Speaker. This is an honest budget. While the PLP governed mostly on their own behalf and on the behalf of their well-connected allies and PLP cronies, this, as I speak today, Mr. Speaker, this is the people's budget. Mr. Speaker, to restore our financial health and to move our Bahamas in a more prosperous direction, my government is taking a strategic and balanced approach in our budgets and financial management. Our balanced and holistic approach includes cutting expenditure, finding savings, and reducing waste and cost in a number of areas. It includes aggressively targeting corruption and the misuse of public funds, which is a tremendous burden on public finances. It includes major investments in education and training and the development of entrepreneurs. It includes major investment in critical infrastructure. It includes improving the ease of doing business in order to stimulate growth and productivity. And it includes increased revenue generation through more domestic investment and foreign direct investment. It includes, Mr. Speaker, increased revenue generation by a higher VAT rate and a sliding scale tax on gaming operations, among other tax measures. It includes ongoing reform of taxes, including ongoing decreases in or elimination of various tariffs and duties. It includes major investments in BEC and renewable energy in order to long-term decrease the cost of energy, electricity. It includes improved fiscal and budgetary management through financial accountability legislation and the modernization of public finance and public accounting practices, methods, and technology. It also includes, Mr. Speaker, it also includes investment in social development, social intervention, and social services. Mr. Speaker, except in circumstances and in order to provide opportunity for younger civil servants, public officers will be required or will be retired at age 60. Those with pre-retirement vacation must take their vacation and go on pre-retirement leave. There will be no more hiring of individuals 65 or older, because we must make space for those young people, except in very, very rare circumstances. 65. No, 65. But I'm not gonna put this rule for politicians. You and I could stay. You and I could stay. All right? I ain't reached 65 yet. You up there now, eh? You done there? All right.
Almost there. Don't worry about that.
Huh? I won't put that rule there, but I will put term limits though.
60.
I should put term limits for opposition leaders too, you know. I also wish to announce, Mr. Speaker, I also wish to announce a necessary step in terms of public pension reform. In keeping with the practice of many countries, civil servants' pensions will be contributory for new hirees. Commencement date to be announced soon. This reform, Mr. Speaker, is also necessary in order to begin to seriously address a large pension shortfall. Mr. Speaker, this evening, before the Minister of Finance presented this 2018-19 national budget, I had the privilege of addressing the 83rd Annual Convention of the Bahamas National Baptist Missionary and Educational Convention. During my address entitled "The Common Good and Social Justice," I quoted these words from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, and I quote, "On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity comes along and asks the question, is it popular? But conscience, the heart, conscience, asks the question, is it right?"
Yep.
And there comes a time, Mr. Speaker, when one must take a position that is neither safe, neither politic, nor popular. But he must do it because conscience tells him it is right. Mr. Speaker, I am guided by my heart.
Yes.
I am guided by my conscience. It may not necessarily be popular, but it is right. Mr. Speaker, though this is a tough budget in which hard and difficult choices had to be made, my conscience is clear that my government is doing the right thing to rescue this country. We are doing the right thing in laying the groundwork for a greater opportunity for current and future generations. We are doing the right thing, Mr. Speaker, to stop our Bahamas from heading down a path that would ruin our country for generations. Right here in our region. right here in our region, we are witnessing the painful results of governments waiting too long to make the difficult, though necessary choices to keep their countries from financial collapse.
Yep.
I am determined, Mr. Speaker, I am determined to make sure that our Bahamas does not get to the point where a future Prime Minister must make an emergency call in the middle of the night to an emergency international lending agency to request a bailout. When they were in office and now, while they are in opposition, the PLP only wants to win power so that they can enrich themselves at the expense of the Bahamian people and at the expense of our future as a country. Dr. King's warning, I campaigning to make sure you and I retire together. Huh? Dr. King's warning should not be forgotten. The PLP, listen now, the PLP demonstrates no conscience. The PLP likes to play it safe, to play narrow politics, to remain popular in the midst of their cowardice, expediency, and vanity. In the FNM, we are different, distinctly different. It is always left to us to clean up the PLP's mess. Mr. Speaker, I am a medical doctor. I am a medical doctor by profession. I swore a solemn oath to protect and to preserve life. If a patient came to me very ill and I refused to take action to help them to get better and to improve the quality of their life, I would be guilty of malpractice, negligence. I took an oath as a minister of government to preserve and protect our Bahamas. Given the dire and serious fiscal position of the government and the country, my government would have been negligent and highly irresponsible if we did not take tough action to aggressively respond to the immediate and long-term economic health of our country. When a patient is confronted with a serious diagnosis like cancer, quick and decisive action must be taken. The therapy often includes surgery, radiation, or chemotherapy, dietary changes, and other courses of action. There was a growing cancer in our public finances in terms of huge annual deficits and mounting, potentially crippling debt. The PLP were engaged in fiscal and budgetary malpractice. They would have allowed these cancers to keep growing and spreading. Even at this late hour, they are still playing games with the economic health of the Bahamas, though the very survival of our country is at stake. The health and well-being of our Bahamas, our very way of life is threatened if we do not halt our slide toward potential economic catastrophe. While some lawyers are trained to talk and talk a problem to death, doctors are trained to solve problems, to save lives, and to act. Act decisively and quickly.
Save the patient.
Huh? The time for talk, Mr. Speaker, is over.
Yes.
We must act now to save our country for ourselves and for our future generation. To arrest the twin and dangerous threats to our country of massive deficits and a massive debt, we were guided by the well-known questions. The well-known questions. If not us, who? If not now, when? Mr. Speaker, it is important to remind the country how we got to the difficult state that we are in. That being said, though the Christie Davis PLP were reckless, wasteful, and irresponsible, it is up to this government to get our house in order. But I need to remind the House, Mr. Speaker, and the PLP of the mess they made over the last 5 years, and the F&M now has to clean up. The PLP didn't level with the Bahamian people when they spent nearly $250 million desperately trying to win the last election. Even though they borrowed over $1 million in the last 5 years, they never provided mortgage. What I said?
Million.
No, let me say that again.
Billion.
Let that go on the record. Even though they borrowed over $1 billion in the last 5 years, they never provided the mortgage relief they promised, nor NHI, nor a host of other promises.
Oh.
The PLP didn't level with the Bahamian people when they were giving out millions upon millions in untendered contracts.
Oh, no.
The PLP didn't level with the Bahamian people in accounting for the millions, the many millions spent on Carnival. We are still trying to figure out where all the VAT money gone. They did not use the money to fix the New Providence landfill or BEC. This government is moving to fix the landfill and BEC. And we cannot forget the money spent to bail out the Bank of the Bahamas, which certain PLPs used like it was their private bank, unsecured loans. Even now, again in opposition, the PLP still isn't playing it straight with the Bahamian people. When asked, and you want to listen to this part, you want to listen to this part. You listening? Okay. You're a good man, We still friends. But I can make sure you beat her though.
That's my cousin.
And watch Chester. I ain't saying nothing. When asked if he would reduce VAT upon coming to office, the leader of the opposition tried his customary bob and weave. You remember that? You bob and you weave. Okay.
Yeah, you ain't got no weave. That's right.
Listen, man. You come like Foreman. Foreman was short. Eh? No, it's Fraser. Fraser was short. Yeah. But you have a powerful punch. No, you have a powerful punch. He's a groundhog, you know. He's a groundhog. Every time I go to Family Island, every home I visit, he walking out. Chester, you don't stand a chance, boy. He knows the Family Island well. Let me give you an advice. I stick in my script here. I just do a little sidebar. Let me give you some advice. If you want to survive, stay with them. But this advice I can give you, listen very carefully. The ship is sinking. Make sure I put on a life vest. That will, as that ship sinks, that vest is going to pull you back up to the top so you can live for another day. When asked,
The SSPLP.
anyhow, Mr. Speaker,
SSPLP.
the leader of the opposition tried his customary bob and weave to try to hide the reality that he would likely not reduce the VAT rate. Tell me if I'm wrong. His excuse for not leveling with the Bahamian people is that he claims he would have to know the state of affairs in the country at that time. You claim you need to know what's going on. Well, don't get up yet. Sit down, listen. Well, let me help him to better understand the state of affairs in which the Christie government left the country, since he seems to have conveniently contracted a bad case of amnesia. But he should fret not. Dr. Minnis, I go back in my medical profession, Dr. Minnis has a course of therapy for him that will help his poor memory and recollection. Let me help him to understand, Mr. Speaker, the fiscal mess in which his government had left our country. The Christie Davis PLP overshot their own deficit target every year they were in office. In fact,
Every year.
Chair recognizes the honorable member
Order.
for Cat Island.
I corrected this misconception once and for all the last time it was raised by the member from Elizabeth. Right? In their own budget document that they presented, right? In their own document that they presented, it shows clearly that the deficit from 2013 until the sleight of hand and the sleight of hand in 2017, the sleight of hand of 2013, where they brought in all the bills in June of 2017, that the deficit was on a downward trajectory. And their own page 5 of this. So I just want to correct that. Mr. Speaker, that's what he said.
Stop that. And you know I could make the books look like whatever I wanted to look like too if I were you.
Allow me to continue. Good try.
You know, you could do that hocus pocus thing y'all been doing. You're good at it. No,
Yeah.
you're good at it.
That's a bob and weave.
Exactly. You're good
Anyhow.
at it. That's a bob and weave right there. Yeah.
Before we finish,
The truth is the truth.
I'm going to
Yes, exactly. And I also have it right here.
I'm going to give you some anti-amnesia medication. In fact, in 1 year, the PLP overshot their budget deficit target by approximately $500 million. The Christie government raised more than $1 billion in new
Honorable
revenue.
members,
$1 billion in new revenue, but still managed to run up the debt by $2.5 billion in just 5 years.
Oh, boy.
The Christie PLP, Christie Davis PLP, left an annual financial hole of over hundreds of millions for us to deal with. The Christie Davis PLP, the Christie Davis PLP, Chestnut, you wasn't there yet because you had sent your application to join the FNM, but you double-crossed me.
That's true, Justin.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin, I know how you feel, boy. I know how you feel. I know how you feel.
He double-crossed me. That's why I must put a Prime Minister's office like Zuma and spank him. Anyhow, that's not the point about it. Sit down. The Christie Davis PLP increased the annual civil service payroll by over $250 million during the last 5 years. The Christie Davis PLP were responsible for an almost $90 million spike in interest payment in a single year. The Christie Davis PLP left in total almost $800 million in outstanding bills and obligations.
Holy toad.
These were bills that had never been budgeted or accounted for. The Christie Davis PLP presided over consecutive downgrades due to excessive borrowing and bad financial management. The Christie Davis PLP led our country to junk bond status.
Oh, my God.
This is the mess we inherited. The increase in VAT is a direct consequence of the reckless and irresponsible, corrupt mismanagement of public finances of the Christie Davis government.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, year after year, the PLP optimistically forecast economic growth at rates that never materialized. Year after year, they projected steadily declining fiscal deficits, only to record significantly worse fiscal outcomes.
Yep.
The last 2 years of their mandate were especially horrendous example of irresponsible and outright damnable
Desperation.
or offensive or awful mismanagement of our public finances. In 2015-16, the actual deficit was more than double the amount projected. In the last year, 2016-17, they broke all records with a deficit of $661 million, an almost seven-fold increase over their projected $100 million.
No wonder they had to go.
Mr. Speaker, underestimating an annual deficit by $560 million not only reveals an unsurpassed level of incompetence, it suggests something somewhat more sinister in the behavior of our predecessors. They simply betrayed the trust invested in them by the Bahamian people. They wildly spent taxpayer dollars on questionable projects and hiring in a bid to prolong their privileged stay in office.
Where's the cookie jar?
But, Mr. Speaker, the facts speaks for themselves. But I know you feel bad now, you eh? I'm talking about you.
You Exuma.
Exuma. I know you say, oh, my God. Mr. Speaker, the facts speak for themselves. Since coming to office, we have discovered the true extent of the fiscal mess and malfeasance. After having paid millions of dollars of unpaid bills at the end of 2016-2017 and through 2017-18, we discovered in preparing the 2018-19 budget that we still face a huge pile of additional unpaid bills and arrears to the tune of $360 million.
Coming to the surface.
In addition, we also found that they willfully engaged in under-budgeting for commitments that were well known as a means of presenting rosier fiscal projections than were warranted. In their last 2 years in office, they increased the government debt by a staggering $912 million. And this, despite the $1.5 billion in revenues that were collected from the VAT during the first 2.5 years of its existence. Over their 5-year term, their fiscal mismanagement produced a total increase in debt of over $2.6 billion for an annual average of $500 million per year. As a direct result of this mushrooming debt level, our government is now saddled with an annual interest bill of $381 million.
That's $1 million per Bahamian.
That's right. Yeah.
Per Bahamian.
These And what about their promise to remove the impediments to business growth? It also went out of the proverbial window, along with many of the other promises in their charter. As a result, our ranking in the World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index deteriorated from 85th place in 2012 to 121st place in 2017. But, Mr. Speaker, we will fix this embarrassing situation. Mr. Speaker, based on their past performance or lack thereof, the PLP should hang their heads in shame. But, Mr. Speaker, you know, they are incapable of shame. They are incapable of accepting responsibility. And, Mr. Speaker, if anyone thought that running massive deficits year after year is the proper prescription for the promotion of stronger and durable economic growth, the track record of our predecessors should definitely serve as a stark cautionary tale. Clearly, persistently large deficits leading to debt levels rising to critical limits affect market confidence in the macroeconomic stability of a country. Indeed, we saw just such an eventuality with our downgrading by Standard & Poor's to junk status under the watch of our predecessors. This speaks loudly and clearly about credibility and confidence. Mr. Speaker, the PLP who took the country to the credit rating junkyard status, now all of a sudden, you took us to junkyard status, all of a sudden want to give advice to us on fiscal and economic matters. Can you imagine that, Mr. Speaker? Can you imagine that? They want to give advice. But just like the Bahamian people did in May 2017, we on this side similarly will pay them no mind. Mr. Speaker, we faced stark choices when we came to office. The country faces stark choices. We have very serious problems. Our financial affairs are in a weak state. There are those in this chamber who know that all too well. Yet they prefer to pander and to mislead the public. This is a time when leaders of the people should lead. This is not the time to ponder. This is not the time to mislead. This is not the time to run and hide. And this is not the time for cheap politics. Throughout the years, Mr. Speaker, the founders of our party and their successors have demonstrated their commitment to principle rather than personal interests. They have demonstrated courage in the face of great challenge. I do not, and we do not, intend to abandon this proud tradition. I've said it before, and let me say it again so that all and sundry can hear. Mr. Speaker, I prefer to lose an election than lose a country and a future generation. The PLP, on the other hand, prefer to lose a country as opposed to an election. The choice we face, Mr. Speaker, is this. The choice we face is this. Do we deal with the problem now on our own terms, or do we deal with it later on terms dictated by others? Do we take some unpleasant medicine now, or do we undergo serious surgery later on? And by serious surgery, I mean having an international agency, an international emergency landing agent, an international emergency lending agency tell us how much we must raise taxes, tell us how much we must cut civil service pay, how many civil servants we must lay off, how many social programs we must abandon. Mr. Speaker, I want to repeat that again. Do we deal with the problem now, Mr. Speaker?
Right now.
On our terms?
Right now, brother.
On our terms? Or do we deal with it later on terms dictated by others? Do we take some unpleasant medicine now, or do we undergo serious surgery later on? And by serious surgery, I mean having an international emergency lending agency tell us how much we must raise taxes, tell us how much we must cut civil service pay, tell us how many civil servants we must lay off, or tell us how many social programs we must abandon. Mr. Speaker, I want to focus in some detail on my government's economic and fiscal strategy for growth and jobs. In our 2017 manifesto, we outlined our plan for the future. The ultimate aim, in the words of the manifesto, is about rescuing our country from the current socio-economic maelstrom and depression to which it has sunk, and which, if not addressed sooner rather than later, will inevitably lead to the economic demise of our once proud country. This government, Mr. Speaker, is putting in place the measures to fix our fiscal house and to place our economy on solid and stable ground.
Yep.
What experience demonstrates is that beyond aggregate demand, we must seriously focus on the core structural factors that underpin the productivity, competitiveness, and growth of our economy. Research at the IMF has revealed that we do, in fact, face serious structural impediments that require bold policy action if we are to successfully unleash more buoyant medium-term growth. Mr. Speaker, I do want to stress this latter point. Simply moving our economy to the types of growth rates that it has posted over the last 15 years or so is not adequate to the needs of a growing labor force. We must create the conditions, as we are doing through our proactive growth agenda, to engender a significant boost in the potential rate of growth of our economy if we are to significantly reduce the rate of unemployment, both in aggregate and in respect of our youth, and sustainably enhance the standard of living of Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, in our manifesto, we vowed to practice fiscal discipline in the management of the affairs of our nation. We pledged to pursue a transformative socio-economic growth agenda to pull our country out of its economic and fiscal malaise. We began implementing that plan in our first year in office, and we did so prudently within the fiscal means available to us. We also implemented measures to contain expenditure
that produced a 10.3% reduction in the wage bill and purchases of goods and services. Our responsible approach to governance produced an improvement in the 2017-2018 deficit below the level that was projected. In 1 year, we succeeded in cutting the government deficit by some 351 million from the previous year. Relative to the size of the economy, the deficit was reduced by over one-half, from 5.5% to 2.5% of GDP. That brings me to the 2018-19 budget. In developing this budget, we faced a number of daunting challenges. Prime among these were the $360 million in arrears that I mentioned earlier, and that required payment, and the vital need to adopt a right budgeting approach to fiscal management and planning, so that such a pile of unpaid bills never again develops. In the previous budget, we indicated that we would develop fiscal responsibility legislation in order to honor our manifesto commitment to fiscal discipline. That legislation has now been drafted and released for public review and comments. As we steadfastly committed to balancing the budget and getting the burden of debt down to a minimum of 50% of GDP, the draft legislation includes target levels for the deficit that will see it eliminated in 3 years, that is, by 2020-21. These are tough targets indeed, and the timeline for their achievement is challenging. But after so many decades of deficit financing and rising debt level, we finally believe that the time has come for decisive and determined action. We fully intend to proudly wear the mantle as the Bahamian government that finally succeeded in wrestling the deficit to the ground and bringing us to a much healthier fiscal position. This in itself, Mr. Speaker, will bolster confidence and stimulate enhanced domestic and foreign investment in our economy and country. Our growth action plan also targets the various structural impediments that constrain our medium and long-term rate of economic growth. Mr. Speaker, shortly after taking office, we established a private sector-led committee to review and develop recommendations in respect of the ease of doing business in our country. And as a result, a fundamental restructuring of the business license system has been undertaken. That will, once fully completed in early 2019, streamline the entire business license process. This will enable much faster approval times through greater use of digital platforms that will support the integration of systems between agencies to complete online services. A number of other administrative and legislative improvements have also been developed in response to the committee's recommendations. Mr. Speaker, in the budget, we allocated over $5 million for the government support program for small and medium-sized businesses, including the establishment of the Small Business Development Center. And this center, Mr. Speaker, will provide advisory and technical support to Bahamians when opening a business or expanding operations. It will also steer entrepreneurs to funding opportunities and assist businesses in dealing with the regulatory and tax registration requirements for new businesses. But most importantly, It will help them get cash in their hands to make the investment necessary to help them realize their entrepreneurial dreams. You may recall, Mr. Speaker, that earlier this year, I announced that the government would commit $25 million to small businesses in the Bahamas. We are making good on our promise. We on this side, Mr. Speaker, are known for keeping our promise. We keep our promises. Mr. Speaker, the other side has a reputation for talking much and delivering little. We do not operate that way. When we say we are going to do something, by the grace of God, we make it happen. I remind the people, Mr. Speaker, that we've also provided a waiver of business license fees for all small businesses whose turnover is less than $100,000. Under the direction of my office, an incentive program has been developed to provide for the designation of economic empowerment zones in the Bahamas, beginning with the over-the-hill community. The budget allocates $5 million for this initiative in 2018-19, in addition to a number of tax relief measures and incentives valued at an estimated $6 million. Mr. Speaker, skills shortages and mismatches have been identified as a key structural impediment to stronger growth. Our plan of action includes measures to directly address this issue. For instance, some $4 million is allocated in the budget for the recruitment of up to 200 new college graduates who will be given the opportunity to develop the professional work skills required by the public service of the 21st century. No experience required, Mr. Speaker. We know that our young Bahamian college graduates need an opportunity to gain professional experience. And we know we need Mr. Speaker, we need those wonderful, gifted, bright Bahamian minds to bring their energy, their drive, their passion, their intellect, and skills to drive what we must be a new public service of the Bahamas. In this vein, Mr. Speaker, it is essential to increase the rank of trained economists in the public service. This is consistent with a more intensive approach to designing and implementing policies that are grounded on sound technical analysis and having such policies when best tailored to our unique circumstances in the Bahamas. There is a strong demand and need for economists in our various government ministries, starting with the Ministry of Finance and in the various regulatory agencies. To satisfy these skill sets, a graduate-level program in economics at the University of the Bahamas would be important and significant. We are encouraged, therefore, by the engagement of the Central Bank and other stakeholders with UB to get a master's degree program in economics started. Once established, it is expected that suitable candidates will feed into this program from inside the public sector and from public sector agencies. A UB program would allow us to leverage resources to train more Bahamians locally at the master's degree level, from among whom we can choose to sponsor candidates to study abroad at the PhD level. These are prospects who may return to contribute to various national capacities. They will return, Mr. Speaker, to contribute in various national capacities or to competitively contribute on behalf of the Bahamas in various international capacities. In 2017, the Central Bank introduced the T. Boswell Donaldson Research Prize in Economics to recognize scholarly work undertaken by Bahamian University students. And over time, this is expected to promote more awareness of the value of undertaking applied research on the economy and to stimulate more interest in economics as a profession. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker, it will recognize and celebrate talent that is already developing within this discipline. And I applaud the bank for this initiative. Mr. Speaker, the time is long overdue to stop the political hiring of persons regardless of skill sets just to win votes, the type which was mastered by the PLP. Instead of a responsible government committed to our young people, we are providing real and substantive opportunities for qualified Bahamians regardless of politics. Their talent and ambition is all that will matter, not their party affiliation. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier, I am so happy to make that call to the Vice President of the University of Bahamas to send me their 4 top students in economics whom I've met with, offered them a job, high-paying job, 1-year contract in the government sector, after which we will sponsor them in an Ivy League school, top school, for a further year to pursue their education, after which they will return to help build our public sector. This is a 10-year plan, Mr. Speaker. This is a 10-year plan where we would identify the needs of all the various different ministries and ask the University of Bahamas or other institutions to identify their top students so that we can do the same, hire them and send them off for training. Mr. Speaker, in 10 years, we'll be looking at 10 times 4, at least 40 individuals whom would be top-level individuals who would represent the future of our country, and one may possibly be standing here as the Prime Minister of this country.
Yes.
To assist with this, Mr. Speaker, we are establishing in the office of the Prime Minister a public service modernization unit. Again, Mr. Speaker, as a part of a real investment in our young people, we have also allocated a $2.6 million for scholarships at the Bahamas Technical and Vocational Institute, BTVI. So that all qualifying full-time Bahamian students will be able to obtain scholarships for free tuition for any degree or certification program. We are examining with the senior team of the Institute the possibility of paying a monthly stipend as incentive for students in programs for which there is keen demand in the marketplace. Students on these scholarships, Mr. Speaker, will have to attend class regularly and will have to meet certain academic performance standards. If they apply themselves and do their part, we will do our part. Mr. Speaker, every year we have a summer program for students. And I visited Freeport and was moved by the information I had obtained and learned from BTVI in Freeport. It was pointed out to me that they have a technology, ICT program, web shop designs, data interpretation, etc. Website. What did I say? Web shop? Website. You know what? I don't play numbers. I don't play numbers.
You can
Yeah.
spin that however you want to.
Website designs, etc. And what was pointed out, Mr. Speaker, what was pointed out to me is that every student that enters such a program, there was 100% employment. And in fact, there was a demand for more. They could not produce the amount of students or behemoths necessary for the various companies. And we speak about establishing a technological hub in Grand Bahama. But it's also essential that we have the necessary skills to support this hub. We must establish an educational hub, or at least prepare our students for a technological hub, or we will find ourselves with foreign nationals providing such opportunities. And Mr. Speaker, we have redesigned our summer programs because it was pointed out that the best time to catch these individuals were the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades. And therefore, we've redesigned our summer programs so that 50 students from Grand Bahama would enter the BTVI technical program, computer, and 100 from New Providence would enter such a program. This would be a summer job, but educational summer job, and they will be paid their normal summer student rate. Mr. Speaker, this is in preparation, preparing our students for tomorrow, especially where there's a demand for employment. And as our young people develop marketable skills, they position themselves for good paying jobs or to venture out as entrepreneurs, being their own bosses. Mr. Speaker, I am advised that our announcement of this BTVI scholarship program has already fueled substantial calls to the Institute with young Bahamians. I'm told by the Minister of Education, it's overwhelming. With young Bahamians excited about this government's planned investment in them. That is music to my ear, Mr. Speaker. The opportunity will create greater demand for BTVI training, and as such, we have allocated $3.5 million in the capital budget for BTVI to help them begin the necessary upgrades and expansion of facilities to meet this increased demand. Through a loan with the Caribbean Development Bank, we will be expanding the facilities around information technology in particular, so that our students are even more ready for this 21st century digital economy and digital revolution. This government, Mr. Speaker, is the one that is investing in our young people, and in doing so, laying the foundation for their well-being and the sustained economic growth of our country. Mr. Speaker, public infrastructure is also a critical component of our growth action plan, as modern and efficient infrastructure serves as a vital foundation for more buoyant growth of the private sector. Such investments will include airports, bridges, docks, roads, administrative complexes, and clinics that will bring productive returns on investment and provide employment for Bahamians throughout the country. The government will look at private-public partnerships, PPPs, in these endeavors to the extent that these are feasible and reasonable from an economic and financial point of view. But instead of the dubious PPPs that lacked true transparency and any policy framework, the ones done by the previous administration that have only served to saddle the government with expensive short-term loans, this government will indeed put in place a documented and established policy framework for PPPs that will be known and understood. I know you can have a question coming up. Known and understood by the public. Mr. Speaker, we will introduce a transparent PPP, and we will make a commitment to construct a new court complex with all the bells and whistles, magistrate, supreme, a new complex with everything within. Mr. Speaker, we are spending $56 million on rented commercial, $50 million annually on rented commercial facility. We cannot sustain that. And therefore, we will also construct on the Market Street, Old St. John's property, a multi-government complex to hold various different ministries, immigration, foreign affairs, passport, and other agencies related to them. And we will look at the needs of other ministries so that they can all be within one complex. And once we know which ministries are going within that complex, we can design our structure to accommodate such facility. Mr. Speaker, it's only a matter of moving the $50 million that we are paying outside to inside more improved quality facilities that Bahamian people can invest in and see their money grow. But it will not, our complexes will not be maintained by government. We have a bad track record. We have a bad track record. So it'll be maintained by proper agencies. I know you like that, eh? You can have a new courthouse. You'll enjoy it, because you won't be in politics, but you'll still be practicing law. So you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy it. Never again should a future government be bound to millions of dollars of commitments on taxpayer-funded projects for which there are no formal contracts. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the same ones who were handing out millions of dollars of the people's money with no formal contracts are the same ones who now suddenly have all sorts of advice on economic and fiscal matters. The same ones who didn't know enough to ensure that the government gets proper project profiles and assessments and vetted contracts, they who are running that kind of tuck shop operations, they want to now convince the Bahamian public that they have something sensible to contribute. Mr. Speaker, you know, they truly have no sense of shame.
In support of the government's focus on public infrastructure, the budget allocates an additional $66 million to the capital expenditure budget in 2018-2019, which among others includes $13.5 million for the digital government initiative in the Ministries of Finance and Education. I would, of course, Mr. Speaker, be remiss if I fail to mention the budget allocation of $1 million for the program of cultural grants to be administered through an independent facility for that purpose. We shall appoint a non-political board to head a special fund to support the development of Bahamian artists, novelists, sculptors, filmmakers, playwrights, who are involved in projects of cultural significance. Although the government will seed the fund will be open to donations from any and all private sectors. Applicants will be able to apply to the board to obtain small grants from $1,000 to $25,000 in the first instance to support defined initiatives that they are undertaking that add to the cultural expression of the country. These are to be substantive projects such as writing a book, producing a film or documentary, commissioning an art series, putting on a play, creating a performance space for musicians, poets, etc. The fund, Mr. Speaker, will be a co-investor in the projects, and the grant recipients will be required to fulfill the terms of their grant award. I repeat, Mr. Speaker, this will not be a matter of politics. No Bahamian artist will have to come to me or any politician to get a grant. So I put them on warning. There's a $1 million grant for artists. Don't call me. I can't give you a grant. It's no politics involved. It's an independent body. Don't call the deputy.
No.
Don't call the minister responsible for national security. They will all tell you where to go. So the public on notice. This is a new day. You don't need any letter for any employment. Don't call us. It's not that.
Bring your gifts and your talents.
That's it.
We shall put into the bylaws that the board is not to take instruction or guidance from any politician on any application. In my upcoming national address, Mr. Speaker, I will offer additional ideas for grants for students, athletes, and artists.
Yep.
In the area of Junkanoo, I know they're listening.
All right.
JJ, I know you're listening, and I know Willa listening. I know Kool-Aid was listening. I can only speak for the Saxons. I don't know the Valley. But I know the Valley is listening.
They're listening in Grand Bahama too.
Grandmama listening too?
Yes.
All right. In the area of Junkanoo, the government is mindful of the long hours, rich talent, and artistic abilities displayed by our Junkanooers. Therefore, in this new budget year, we will increase the prize money. It may be doubled, but I won't say how much. but we will increase the prize money. The Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture will introduce for the first time special cash prizes in the A and B categories for best music in New Providence and in Grand Bahama. The Prime Minister's Best Music Award will be introduced in Christmas for the first time. In New Providence, Best Music in Category A, $10,000. Category B, $5,000. Now, It is known that I'm a Saxon. I don't deny that. Mr. Speaker, I want all to hear. I have nothing to do with the judging. So if the Saxons win, the Saxons win. If the Saxons lose, the Saxons lose. But
Someone wins.
we are groundhogs. You know that. We will rush our heart off. $10,000, that's party day.
And my son Stefan will be right there rushing to
Oh, my grandson normally rings cowbells along with me. Every Christmas he rushes with me. But he blows saxophone. So me and him having an argument now.
Who's going to do what?
What should he do? He wants to blow the sax, and I want him to ring the bell. And these young people they are unique and intelligent, you know. I said to him, I want you to ring the cowbells along with me. That's the family's tradition. He's 11 years old, and he said to me, Papi, you live your life. This is my life. So I've lost that battle.
He's bringing the wind.
In Grand Bahama, category A, best music, $5,000. And category B, $2,000. Y'all not big as us yet.
Well, what you mean?
You're still playing in the minor leagues.
Gotta come to Nassau to beat y'all. I guess that's how it is.
Yeah, yeah. Huh? But we got 99.9% Nassau. Angliston escaped. And Angliston enjoying her last 3.5 years, eh? All right. I love Angliston. I grew up in Angliston, right? Yeah, no. To be honest, no. I grew up in every ghetto in New Providence except those in the east, Camp Road and those. I grew up in Baintown. I grew up in the Grove. I grew up in Angliston. I grew up in Montel Heights. I grew up in Kennedy Sub. I grew up in Subby. I never had the opportunity to move to the east. I just moved. See? No, let me tell you. See, let me give you a history. Let me give you a history lesson. Allow me to divert. Let me give you a history lesson. Most of us, some are in denial, of course, most of us would have born and grew up in Baintown. We would have been bordered by Nassau Street in the east. Yeah, you know about this. Nassau Street in the east. In the west. Nassau Street in the west. Wolf Road in the south. And Collins Wall to the east. We all were in that confine. No, the north went to the sea. You fellas were there.
Born there.
You were the sea. You were the sea.
I was born the same area.
No. The only time we used to see the sea, you remember they used to have the ditch at Big Pond. We used to swim in the ditch. But we didn't know that that was the residue for all chemicals. We were swimming with all oil, debris, and never knew. But you know. So,
Exactly. Look where you got.
as you made an elevation out of poverty, you moved the Boyd Sub. No. You moved the Boyd Sub or Farrington Road area. That was the that was the first step moving up.
Yes.
If on the other hand, no, I can get there. I can explain it to you. No, you listen to me. You listen to me. I grew up in all these ghetto areas, so I can tell you. If you were not as influent to move to the west, which was Boyd Sub and Farrington Road, the Grove was then developed. So you moved beyond Wolf Road to the Grove. And the Grove was developed by Simnettos. They did a good job. They did a good job.
And Boyd.
So
And Angus.
you were still poor, but you were not affluent enough to go to Boyd's or Farnroad, so you went to the Grove. Then, those in Farrington Road, as they became more affluent, they went to Seabreeze.
That's correct.
Us poor people in the Grove, as we became a little more affluent, the Grove and Angliston, we developed at the same time. So we were all brothers and sisters. So as that developed, we went to Ridgeland.
That's the second step.
Yes. And if we still were not wealthy enough to move to Boyd Sub or Seabreeze, we then made another step up. So we went to Malcolm Allotment, which was Kennedy, and South Beach.
Yep.
So I stuck with the ghetto. I couldn't go to Boyd Sub, I couldn't afford it. Seabreeze was out of the question. And the East, I didn't even know exist. So I'll sit you down and give you a history. So yes, Angliston, I am very familiar with all the ghetto areas.
Arm wrestling, Angliston. Are you ready?
Yes!
We shall see.
You know,
That's man against man.
you know, Mr. Speaker, you look at Angliston. You look at Angliston. Her and I are different, but you never believe we family, you know. We family.
He's talking everything.
We salt and pepper. We salt and pepper. See what happened is, Angliston double-crossed me. She got both the brains and the looks.
Okay.
Anyhow,
You shut me up.
Boy, that's something I never did. I never hear that. Let's record that.
anyhow, Mr. Speaker, in Grand Bahama, Category B gets $2,000. This brings me to a discussion of the central fiscal challenge that the government faced in developing the budget. When we tallied up all the fiscal pressures that are present, we determined that we faced a fiscal gap of some 400 million. And if we were to achieve the mandated target of a deficit of 1.8% of GDP in 2018-19. As such, a target is a critical part of our plan to restore and bolster credibility, confidence, and stronger growth it simply has to be met. Having just released a draft fiscal responsibility bill for consultation with that target as a key fiscal anchor, our credibility as disciplined and prudent fiscal managers is also at stake. The hard reality is that there are very few feasible options available within the time frame required to fully address a fiscal gap of that magnitude. We therefore came to the realization that an increase in the rate of VAT to 12% was the only and reliable option to allow us to deal with all the fiscal pressures present while also respecting the requirements of the fiscal responsibility law. Mr. Speaker, I only want to point out that we would have looked at doing nothing, what impact it would have had on our country. That was not an option. We would have destroyed a future generation. We would have looked at 10%, and the result was still not good for a future generation. The result may have been good for us, but was bad for the future. We looked at 15. That was not an option. That is too much a pain for anybody to burden. And we looked at 12. But we realized there'd be some challenges even with 12. But we know how to overcome those challenges. And therefore, we had to increase to 12 so as to protect a future generation. The VAT measures is the key feature of a 3-year fiscal plan that will eliminate the mountain of arrears, provide for the right budgeting for known commitments, provide for the judicious funding of the highest priority initiatives in our socio-economic growth agenda, provide for significant reductions in customs and excise duties in the second and third years of the plan, and secure the attainment of the critical deficit targets. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that some have suggested that an increase in VAT of that magnitude will serve to slow domestic consumption and the rate of economic growth. In this context, I would note that the economy is presently in the midst of an appreciable upswing, whose momentum should mitigate the impact to some extent. This is especially relevant in the tourism sector in particular. As well, it is worth noting that a significant portion of the new VAT revenues will be redirected back into the economy through the payment of arrears to various creditors. I would also offer a reminder that following the introduction of VAT at 7.5% in 2015, the economy actually strengthened to a growth rate of 1% from a decline in 2014. So I would suggest, Mr. Speaker, that a sharp contraction in economic activity as a result of the VAT increase is not inevitable. In the event, any possible temporary impact needs to be weighed against the potential negative effects of not closing the fiscal gap and meeting the deficit target, thereby facing the prospects of further downgrades in our credibility and credit rating. We should also, Mr. Speaker, not lose sight of the fact that the government has been mindful in the development of its plan to provide tax relief to the most vulnerable of our society. Now, Mr. Speaker, I just want to deviate here. I know that the member spoke about downgrading, junk bonds, etc. But we know as you further downgrade and be at junk bond status, and you borrow, your interest rate continues to rise. The interest rate continues to rise. It means that the monies that you have put away are utilized to pay your interest rate. And therefore, that reserve is compromised. It's paying foreign entity interest rates. Sooner or later, that continues to rise. But the solution really is to grow your economy well in excess of 5%. You would accept that. China and Russia and India and those in that category. So as your interest rate continues to rise, you utilize your resources, you downgrade it, then the economy is impacted. Because eventually, you don't have the reserve to purchase materials and foods from the international sector. So your shelves continue to dry up. Now, Mr. Speaker, I went that way because I want to talk about a personal experience, so that those can understand why we took this course, so that they would not have to go through what I have experienced personally. I went to Jamaica, Mr. Speaker, in 2019. What is it? When I went there? Why, I get your amnesia now. Eh? Anyhow, in 85. 80, sorry, to specialize in obstetrician gynecologist, 80. And I watched Jamaica go through what we're avoiding, what we're trying to prevent, and what we will prevent. The supermarkets, foreign currency they could not purchase from abroad. The supermarkets, I'm talking about personal experience, the supermarkets were like walking into an empty warehouse. One aisle has nothing more than soap. Another aisle has nothing more than rice. And I'm talking about rice in the little packet, Ziploc, but it was not Ziploc, you used the string. Then another aisle would have some other entity. Then you went to the store, supermarket, at 7 o'clock in the morning. You entered a line, waiting in line to reach the butcher component of the store so that you can purchase chicken or whatever. Waiting until about 11 o'clock. Haven't reached the front, now to be told that we've reached our quota. So you now have to turn back and come another day. The speaker, you purchase rice. You go home to cook the rice in the little Ziploc bag. And what was done, the rice was placed in a bowl of water. And the weevil floated to the top. You then scooped the weevil off, and you transported the rice into another bowl of water, and you stir it again. And the weevil floated to the top again. The boll weevil, you know. They float to the top again. And you wiped them off, after which you then cooked your rice. That's the type of living I would have gone through. And it was not unusual for some of the weevil to remain in the rice, so you ate weevil. No big deal, you know. It's proteins. So these are changes that you go through that we're trying to avoid. Then you have minimal funding, so you cannot purchase ticket to fly back and forth to visit your family. Now, as a result, you may have had enough for two. So my wife and son would always fly back home to make sacrifices. So I would remain because we did not have enough. Your porridges that you know, oatmeal and those others, did not exist. We ate banana porridges. The green banana that is stirred, boiled down. So we had green banana, we had banana porridges, not as we know here. Then, in many instances, you did not have sufficient food. So you ensured that your wife and my son had sufficient to eat. And because I was a doctor, I ate in the hospital. I ate with the patients. This is real talk. Personal experience. Then, Mr. Speaker, so we were not exposed to the bells and whistles, the grapes and the peaches and all these things that you're exposed to. When I came home in 1985, the first time I took my son, we went to the supermarket. Remember, he had just come from Jamaica, and now he's walking into a Bahamian supermarket. And suddenly, for the first time in his life, he is saying corn flakes, grapes, cereal. And he stood up and he looked at the supermarket and he said to me, and I'll always remember these words, he said to me, "Papi, we rich." The first time he ate cornflakes, and he was at least about 8. The first time he ate cornflakes was in 1985 when we returned home. We did not have that luxury. Because we went through what we're trying to avoid. All right? Anyhow, Mr. Speaker, just giving you personal stories. And that's why it's essential to protect a future generation. Mr. Speaker, among the measures announced are the elimination of VAT on breadbasket items, medicines, residential property insurance, as well as on electricity and water for a large number of households. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to tell them one more experience, but I know they would take this as a joke and laugh. At Christmas time, you had beautiful Christmas trees here with all your ornaments, etc. Anyhow, I'll go on. Mr. Speaker, I do want to stress as well. We'd hold that back. I do want to stress as well that unlike the experience with the introduction of VAT under the previous administration, my government is going forward with its three-year fiscal plan within the rigid constraints of new fiscal responsibility legislation. Yes. The law will not only mandate fixed and declining deficit targets, but will also restrain the growth of recurrent expenditure. No longer will taxpayer VAT dollars vanish into thin air, never to be seen or accounted for again. The government will be fully accountable for the fiscal results of its plan to Parliament. The proposed Private Sector Fiscal Responsibility Council and the Bahamian public. Our feet will be held to the fire to ensure that we do in fact realize the reductions in the deficit that we plan. Mr. Speaker, ours is indeed a transparent, accountable, and responsible plan that will put our country on a solid economic footing, not only today, but also over the long term on a sustainable basis. Unlike our predecessors, we have a plan, and we will deliver on that plan. Mr. Speaker, when we came to office, we knew difficult choices had to be made. The PLP was in office before us. The PLP that was in office before us was the worst government since majority rule. The PLP way, is for them and them alone. The party has no philosophy or ideology other than this: get the money. We do not want our country to spiral to crisis. We do not want to be forced by international lenders to fire thousands of servants as a condition of debt restructuring. We do not want, Mr. Speaker, to have a slash public service wage by 10% as a condition for foreign emergency lenders. There are so many examples in our region of what happens when borrowing gets out of control. Countries spiral to hopelessness and open-ended recession. Many of their people leave, becoming economic refugees in other people's country. Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, listen carefully, Mr. Leader Opposition, so that you don't stand. It's my opinion now. In my opinion, the Leader of the Opposition spent his career as Perry Christie's sidekick. That's my opinion. He was there to support Christie in their law practice. He was there to support Christie for 2 decades when he was leader of the PLP. You bring that part up. He sat next to Christie and was part of all that was done. But we are not like them, Mr. Speaker. The PLP would tell you, let's go back to the days of borrowing and partying. They would tell the country they will cut VAT and other taxes and make things fun if they regain power. But we know what listening to them would do to our country. It would lead to complete disaster. We have seen that PLP movie before. It has a very bad ending. When you borrow so much money in such a small country, there is a time when you have to pay it back, and when the high borrowing must end. We as a government have decided to take bold action. Nobody, Mr. Speaker, nobody, not I, nobody. Nobody likes raising taxes. And I am a businessman. My colleagues dislike raising taxes too. As we outlined in our 3-year fiscal plan, we intend to first bring order to the government situation. Circumstances permitting, we will make reductions on duty. Mr. Speaker, PLP has no plan. They never do. All they have is public relations and profiling. They come in here and make outrageous statement after outrageous statement for their own narrow political interests. The leader of the opposition has had a long, lifelong ambition to be Prime Minister. That's your plan. The MP, that's my opinion. Your time, Glennis. The MP for Angliston.
Yes. Go ahead.
MP for Angliston doesn't support him. The MP for Angliston doesn't support him.
You're free, you can speak in here.
So she is posturing for attention to bolster her next leadership run.
Oh, yeah.
You obviously don't know me, my brother.
Exuma.
You don't know me.
Exuma.
You don't know me.
The Exuma and Ragged Island MP.
Amazon.
Try, I believe you. I believe you.
Don't get next
That's why we family. You get the Amazon component. The Exumas and Ragged Island MP tries to find every camera and reporter available to get in the news because he wants attention to his ambition to be the PLP leader soon. That's them. That's that crew, me crew. The PLP spends no time on public policy issues. They spend no time thinking of the future of the Bahamas. Left the country in bad shape. Their term between 2012 and 2017 was defined by recession, scandals. Already with us in office, the economy grew by 1.4% last year. It is projected to grow by 2.5% this year and 2.25% next year. We have had successes on the crime front with a significant decrease in murders as compared to last year. It is important for Bahamians to understand our plan. We cannot keep borrowing plenty money forever. My government has decided this year to slow the rate of borrowing.
Yes, sir.
The last government borrowed. No one knows where all the money went. When a PLP cabinet minister was asked on live radio where the VAT money went, his tongue was twisted. He made no sense. The 3-year plan, Mr. Speaker, starts with the increase in VAT. We are doing it to slow the rate of borrowing. This is the lowest rate of borrowing in a budget in recent memory. That was the first step. Now the Minister of Finance said this, but it got little coverage. As part of our 3-year plan, we intend to reduce taxes. When governments go to a store, they see VAT on their bill. That is, now it's important to listen to this. When Bahamians go to a store, they see VAT on their bill. That is the relatively small tax for goods. The big taxes are hidden. The item someone is buying may have a 45% customs duty or 65%. That's the hidden tax that makes things so expensive in our Bahamas. Before, governments could raise those taxes as much as they like. The people would not complain or protest because those taxes were not on their bills. They are hidden. We want to encourage shopping at home. We want that money to stay here and not go abroad. That is why in this budget, we removed duty for retailers on clothes and shoes. That move is the beginning of a much wider effort. Mr. Speaker, nothing is free in life, you know. As the member for Central and South Abaco said in his budget presentation, borrowing is a tax on future generations, and that is not our way. They want to make the money now and leave Bahamians with endless deficits and a huge debt. We are different than them, Mr. Speaker. When we were elected, we knew the Bahamas was in a crisis, but it was worse than anyone thought. We will not let the Bahamas fail. I do not want us to have to go through what our friends in Barbados are going through now. The new Prime Minister there has had to raise all kinds of taxes in the initial phase of our stabilization effort. We wish her and the people of Barbados all the best in getting that country back on track. We must not, however, Mr. Speaker, get there. We will not allow the Bahamas to get there. When the Bahamian people voted last time, they knew that the PLP had wasted their money. We just didn't know how much. And they have not changed. During time running out, let me move along. Huh? No. Mr. Speaker. No, man. Y'all want me? Yeah. Anyhow. I welcome and understand the vigorous national debate about national budget. But Bahamians should not be fooled by the political games the PLP is playing in order to get their hands back on the VAT money. They are like a bad contractor who messes up your house, but then expresses sympathy that your house is poorly built. Then when you get a new and better contractor to fix and rebuild your house, all the old contractor does is whine and complain and cuss because you are getting a better house because you fired them. The bad contractor is angry that they can't get their greedy hands on your money anymore. Under my government, you will know where and how government revenues are being spent. We are doing the hard things to make the Bahamas stronger, to ensure sustained success for you and future generations. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas economy is recovering and continues to grow, generating economic activity throughout the economy, including more jobs. Foreign direct investment is playing a critical part in our recovery. The Bahamas experienced a diversification of foreign direct investment in its economy during the past year. As a result of the Commercial Enterprise Act 2017 and investment promotion tours in the U.S., the Bahamas experienced new businesses in financial services, biomedical health facilities, information technology, and energy. Inflows in the tourism sector remained steady, with the expansion of boutique marina resorts, new build hotels, and condominium complex, and the acquisition of stalled mega resort properties. There is also an uptick of inflows in agriculture and entertainment and services, with offerings such as motorsport and karting track facilities, theme parks, farm production, and a seafood processing plant. total capital investment in the Bahamas beginning May 2017 until the present day is estimated at $767,444,000. The capital investment is projected to generate 6,004 construction jobs for Bahamian contractors and 8,040 operational positions within the next 5 years. New Providence attracted the larger number of inflows with investment in resorts, condominium developments, farming, and cement manufacturing. The New Providence market is buoyed by the $20 million purchase of the Hurricane Hole land and marina property on Paradise Island by Sterling Hurricane Hole Limited. The property will be developed into Hurricane Hole Residential Community Resort and Marina and will expend an estimated $194 million through its completion in 2025. A notable investment in financial and industrial sectors is the relocation of Shell Western Supply and Trading Limited operations from Barbados to the Bahamas. The company is involved in proprietary international trading in commodities. An estimated $3 million will be expended to establish the new office in New Providence. The Eleuthera Resort and residential property markets have been the most active among the Family Islands in recent months, making up a substantial amount of the total investments. The $4 million Harbor Island Resort and Marina, with an estimated capital investment of $55 million, will add to the ultra-luxury resort and marina product offerings on Harbor Island. Nearby Man Island will experience a newly constructed 15-room hotel. Unicorn Key Development is in the initial stages of developing a second home residential community in central Eleuthera. A new cement plant will be built on Eleuthera to augment the supply of concrete products for the fast-growing construction industry on that island. Government-approved investments in Grand Bahama are heavily concentrated on tourism and the digital economy. Grand Palm Beach expended $42 million for the acquisition of the former Gin Summer-stalled resort, marina and airport development at West End, Grand Bahama. Economic activity in West Grand Bahama, is being supported by the Blue Marlin Cove Resort and Marina Expansion Project, valued at approximately $1.2 million. East Grand Bahama was approved for a $37 million resort, hotel, and commercial development, which will include a world-class motorsport and karting tracks. Other Grand Bahama investments focused on P-Rock production and the purchase and development of distressed rental properties into boutique resorts in Freeport. The Berry Islands, Abaco, and Andros Island experienced their share of investments with the acquisition and expansion of existing properties. Mr. Speaker, efforts to revitalize the Over the Hill are very close to my heart. Like many others who were born and raised in this historic area, it is a place that we want to ensure is never overlooked again. For those of us who love the Over the Hill area, we seek to see a economic recovery and rebirth within those communities. Our Over the Hill revitalization plan has several components. Today, I focus on the economic empowerment component. In my upcoming national address and on other occasions, I will discuss other components in more details. When I think of economic empowerment, I think of the many shopkeepers, barbers, hairdressers, and other independent entrepreneurs who work over the hill. I think of the many establishments which have managed to survive over the years. And I remember the other shops which have closed their doors because of hardship resulting in a loss of jobs over the hill. To provide much needed support to businesses and residents in the community, a package of economic stimulus activities have been designed for implementation. We will create an economic empowerment zone. This includes a long-awaited package of legislation outlining concessions to reduce taxes, such as duty and real property tax for homeowners and businesses. We are imitating land reform initiatives, working with the Office of the Attorney General and the Land Unit. We will begin a process to develop a comprehensive strategy to assist residents with obtaining title. For example, we know that many people may be living in the home of a grandmother or grandfather who has long since passed on with no will in place. For many families, this is a reality. And we all know without a clear title, the home or land cannot be used to obtain a loan or for any other commercial purposes. Working with the Ministry of Labor, we plan to focus attention on job fair programs in the Over-the-Hill area. We will ensure that there is assistance for resume writing with completing applications and preparing for interviews. Hand in hand with job readiness is also assistance with getting the necessary documents and identification like NIB card. These are excellent opportunities, Mr. Speaker, for churches in the community to partner with the Over-the-Hill project. We also want to work with the micro and small businesses in the area, particularly the petty shops, to have them formalized. Recall, Mr. Speaker, that the businesses under 5 million, that for businesses under 5 million, there is no business license tax. But there are many benefits for businesses in terms of access to a greater source of financing and the many benefits under the Over-the-Hill initiative. We also plan to launch what we think may be the first, but certainly the largest business expo for Over-the-Hill businesses. We wish to showcase these businesses to the rest of the Bahamas and to drum up additional businesses for them. Another stream of work relates to the improving financial literacy. We will work with the central bank and other agencies and organizations which are working on empowering people through understanding how to use financial services and personal financial discipline to their families and their communities. A critical part of economic empowerment concerns the creative and cultural economy. We will create economic opportunities for investment in cultural assets. We plan to strengthen our register of historic buildings with the addition of specific over-the-hill properties. We feel that the rejuvenation of these historic sites will begin the process of linking Bay Street with Over-the-Hill in terms of opportunities for tours, excursions, and additional tourist revenue. Many people, Mr. Speaker, do not know of cultural assets such as the Ryan Hart Hotel on Blue Hill Road, the only hotel that accommodated people of color during the days of segregation. For this property, like many other historic icons, a strategy needs to be implemented to have the asset reserved and its stories told during walking tours and to our children. We plan to commit approximately $400,000 this fiscal year to projects aimed at economic empowerment, in addition to the incentives valued at up to $6 million under the Economic Empowerment Zone. Mr. Speaker, the Commercial Enterprise Act approved last year is already bearing fruit. Applications recently approved under the Commercial Enterprise Act 2017 include KB Analytics Limited, a company providing data and consulting services relating to finance. world markets, and global events to its affiliated Kenso Technologies Limited. Our applications approved include Ufera Softwares Limited, a small startup IT company specializing in software design and writing. Shell Western Supply and Trading Limited, GIBC Group, a technological consulting firm, and GB Biopharma Company Limited, a biomedical business. 50% of the businesses approved pursuant to the Commercial Enterprise Act 2017 will be located in Grand Bahama, with the remainder in New Providence. But, Mr. Speaker, I will have more to say about Grand Bahama in my upcoming national address. But please permit me, Mr. Speaker, to note a few developments on our second most populous islands. An agreement was signed in November 2017 with Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line to bring the Grand Bahama celebration back to Grand Bahama and to add a newly acquired sister ship, the SS Neo Classica. The second vessel started sailing in April and now is estimated to bring a significant number of passengers to Grand Bahama annually. It is now expected that via both deployed ships, Bahamas Paradise Cruise Line will be able to deliver several 100,000 cruise passengers to Grand Bahama each year.
Chair recognizes the honourable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do move that the business of this House continues beyond 1 p.m. today.
It has been moved and seconded that the business of this House do extend beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House will continue beyond 1 p.m. this afternoon. The Chair recognizes the honourable member for Kalani.
Deputy Number, I'm getting tired, so I gotta run through this. We are also negotiating, Mr. Speaker, an LF agreement with Sunwing and now have the return of Vacation Express. It has been announced that a total of 8 non-stop flights departing from various U.S. cities began their flight schedules as of last month. Flights from Detroit, Chicago, Nashville, Pittsburgh, New York, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Dallas will be operated by Swift Air. The Ministry of Tourism projects yielding a potential 16,800 passengers. Mr. Speaker, as a result of a Bahamas delegation visit to Texas last year, and specifically to Dell headquarters, Dell has decided to hold their President's Conference 2019 in the Bahamas, which will result in approximately 1,000 visitors and potential long-term business opportunities. The first Bahamas Blockchain Cryptocurrency Conference will be held in Freeport, June 20th, 22nd. The conference is anticipated to attract more technology companies to Grand Bahama. I also note that PharmaChem Technologies Grand Bahama Limited is presently undergoing expansion of its API production facility, which will result in approximately 100 new construction jobs beginning this month. Mr. Speaker, I remind Bahamians and residents that hurricane season has begun and that they should be prepared for what may be another very active season. Over the past 3 years, the Bahamas has witnessed and experienced firsthand what devastating impact a major hurricane can have on personal lives and properties. The records would show that over the past 2 decades, some islands of the Bahamas have been impacted by a hurricane almost every other year. We must continue to consider preparedness at all levels. Through preparedness, we can minimize the losses and damage that occur annually as a result of hurricanes and other severe weather systems, and help to build more resilient communities. NEMA is continuing to refine its coordination and responses to air and sea mishaps, fire, and other emergency events in collaboration with the relevant lead agencies and in conjunction with the local Family Island disaster consultative committees. With the functions of physical and infrastructural assessment and repair assistance being assigned by the Ministry of Public Works, NEMA can now concentrate fully on strengthening the governance structure and the preparedness mechanisms for comprehensive disaster management. The government of the Bahamas is aiming to ensure that the necessary mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery mechanisms are in place through the relevant government organizations. The National Tropical Cyclone and Excessive Rainfall Insurance with the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, CCRIF, has been renewed for the ensuing year. This insurance allows for a quick payout if any of the geographical sectors of the Bahamas is impacted. Additionally, the Bahamas has agreed in principle to a $100 million contingency credit facility through the Inter-American Development Bank, which the country can access if impacted by other major tropical cyclones. Inter-American Development Bank reports on the losses and damage in the Bahamas as a result of Hurricane Joaquin, Matthew, and Irma were pegged near $750 million. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas must do more to minimize the amount of losses and damages by adhering to sound mitigation and preparedness measures and practice. Speaker, 2015, a diagnostic study of public service was completed by the Commonwealth Secretariat. In 2018, the Bahamas participated in a regional civil service diagnostic conducted by the IDB. These reports dealt with the modernization of public service in the Bahamas and all agreed on the same challenges and deficiencies. Many of our practices are anticipated. The 2015 Commonwealth Report identified 7 key strands of development, while the draft IDB report made recommendations using 7 indices, including efficiency, merit, structural consistencies, functional capacity, integrative capacity, management capabilities, and diversity management. In terms of the challenges and recommendations made in the reports, in the coming days, various recommendations will be made to Cabinet for the way forward with regard to ongoing public sector reform. This recommendation, it is anticipated, will be tied directly to the Prime Minister's delivery unit, as it has a direct impact on the ease of doing business and other priorities of the unit. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues and I are committed to restoring this country to good health. We fully intend to put an end to the culture of corruption and waste, of doling out the people's money to families and friends. In the end, we will have a better and brighter Bahamas, a Bahamas we can hand over to the next generation, not with shame, but with pride. A Bahamas that will have demonstrated to the world that this small country has the courage, the good sense, and the capacity to successfully manage our affairs with discipline and common sense. In 2018-19 national budget, the 2018-19 national budget will serve as landmark in moving our country forward. Mr. Speaker, I just want to reconfirm and reinforce what the Minister of Responsibility for Immigration said. A work permit for a particular household limits you there. If you work on other people's property without having permission, you are working illegally. and I send a warning to Bahamians. If you hire an illegal immigrant illegally, we will lock you both up. I send a warning to traffic violators.
Yep.
I've spoken already with the Minister of National Security and the Commissioner of Police. We will not tolerate traffic violators. The police will aggressively be on the roads, arresting you and bringing you forth to justice. The same goes for those who insult and damage our environment. Those dumping experts, they will be dealt with.
Yes, environmental court.
There's an abuse and misuse of cars on the side of the road with for sale signs.
Yes.
I've already informed the Commissioner of Police to put in the paper the warning. If those cars are not removed, the police will have them towed away to the police compound. That is an illegal event, and we will not tolerate it. Trucks driving our streets, improperly protected, and littering as they continue their drive.
Yes.
Spilling debris on our streets. The police will aggressively deal with you. You will be arrested. For those young and old people who use their cell phones and texts,
Yes. Yes.
we will make amendments to the law for hand-free cell.
Yes. Yes.
Your phones
Hands free.
must be in a fixed position.
It's a new day.
It's a hand-free law. This budget, Mr. Speaker,
Yeah. Yeah.
is of hope and opportunity.
All these people holding on.
Good governance is about putting in systems and mechanisms so as to ensure maximum benefits for its citizens. In 2018-19 budget, this 2018-19 budget is not, I repeat, this 2018-19 budget is not about VAT. Rather, it is about our future. It is about our future as a people. It is about our youth.
Yes.
It is about change.
Yes. Yes.
Real change for better.
Real talk.
This budget sets the stage for the upliftment of our people. Mr. Speaker, this is about retooling, restructuring, and modernizing the public service to make it more efficient and responsive to Bahamian needs. We will bring about public sector reform.
Yes.
It's about transforming the inner city through the over-the-hill initiatives and programs, creating economic empowerment zones. I repeat, it is not about that.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, is about providing funds and giving our young people a new start through the self-starter program,
Yes.
which we are moving from $50,000 increasing to $840,000. It's about promoting the government's vision for entrepreneurship. Mr. Speaker, this budget is about sending those 4 young ladies who excelled at University of Bahamas
Yes. Cornell.
to Cornell, Yale, Princeton. It is not about that. If you want to sacrifice the future of this country, vote no
Yes.
to this budget.
Yes.
If you want a better country, vote yes. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is about opportunities for land ownership through the reasonable sale of service lots to young Bahamians.
Yes.
It's about allowing young people finishing university, the University of Bahamas or other universities, to purchase land in this country for $15,000, $20,000 with everything. If you don't want them to have that, vote no. If you want the young people in this country to own land and to have a better future, vote yes. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is about creating the environment for young professionals, police, defense force, customs, immigration and correctional officers, nurses and teachers to start their new homes. If you choose not for nurses, police, custom officers, teachers, not to have their own homes, vote no. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is about educating and training, education and training for a modern and growing economy. It's about changing the paradigm shift through affordable education, thus providing free education to students desirous of attending BTVI this September, and free education for Bahamian students attending the University of the Bahamas in September of next year. This budget, Mr. Speaker, is not, I repeat, it is not about that. This budget is about relieving the stress of Family Island parents and guardians whose children are attending the University of Bahamas through the government's housing assistance program of $500 stipend.
That's it.
If you want Family Island parents to continue to suffer, to be concerned and worried about whether their kids are living in a safe environment, whether their kids are eating, whether their kids are experiencing a quality of life. If you do not want that for their kids, then vote no. If you want to improve the quality of life for our Family Island residents, for our young people, then you must vote yes. Those public servants, at the end of this budget, all public servants must be paid.
Yes.
Those who are promoted must be paid.
Yep.
Those who are receiving new positions
Must be
paid.
Yep.
If you do not want them to be paid, vote no. If you want them to be paid,
Vote
you
yes.
vote yes. This budget, Mr. Speaker,
Private home.
this budget is about eliminating electricity bills, eliminating VAT on electricity bills of $200 and under.
Yes.
And I am told by the deputy that that represents 60,000 people. Houses.
Household.
This budget, Mr. Speaker, is about the supportive public infrastructure investment. If you want Long Island to receive a new airport,
Yep. Zuma.
you want Exuma to receive a new airport,
Alutra.
you want Elutra to receive a new airport, you will vote yes. If you do not, I repeat, Mr. Speaker, if you do not want Long Island to have their water situation corrected, if you do not want Long Island to receive a new airport, if you do not want Exuma to receive a new airport, if you do not want Eleuthera to receive a new airport, and if you do not want the road repair in the West Bay Kalani constituency, then Mr. Speaker, this budget is about the delivery of government's first tranche of key priorities. Key priorities. The over the hill. Land reform. Energy reform and infrastructure. Ease of doing business. Education. Safety. And security. The budget, Mr. Speaker, this budget is about non-VAT application on breadbasket items. This budget is about duty-free concessions on items brought in by airline twice annually. If you want to deprive Bahamians coming through our airports and being entitled to $500 exemption, if you want to take that away from them twice a year, then vote no. If you want to help Bahamians and give them $500 assistance twice per year, you will show compassion. You will show love and respect for your citizens, for your Bahamians. You will show that caring nature. You will vote yes. If you do not care and want to hide behind anything, you will vote no. And an absentee in this parliament during the vote is a no.
Unless you're on business.
The
Minister
of State, the acting Attorney General, is presently home sick. He's waiting for the vote so that he can come in and vote. He cares.
Yes. Good man.
The only excuse for not being here to vote if you are in hospital and you must be in ICU.
Or traveling on government business.
Mr. Speaker, a vote against this budget is telling the young people no to their future. It's saying that you are happy with the status quo. You do not want change. You do not want them to be educated. You do not want them to own land. You do not want them to be entrepreneurs. You are telling the Junkanoo groups that you do not want them to get an increase in prices.
Ooh.
You are telling the over-the-hill community.
Which constituency that is? What constituency that is?
You are telling them that you do not want this. You are telling them. You are telling them that you do not want the new Southern Recreation Grounds, Mr. Speaker. And I can say that the tendering documents are going out very soon for the recreation of the new Southern Recreation Ground. Mr. Speaker, I close with the words of Dr. Martin Luther King, which I noted earlier in my contribution. Dr. King declared, on some positions, Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? And vanity comes along and asks the question, is it popular?
Yes. Yes.
But conscience asks the question, is it right?
Is it right? Is it right?
And there comes a time
Yes.
when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular. But he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Yes.
If your conscience tells you
Distinctly. Yes.
that you do not want a future for the right people, for the young people, then you will vote no. If your conscience tells you that you do not care about the future of this Bahamas, then you will vote no. Much of this budget, Mr. Speaker, much of this budget may not be expedient. Much of this budget may not be expedient, nor popular, nor safe, nor politic. But conscience tells me that we are doing the right thing for the country and for the people that I love with all my heart and all my soul. We are doing the right thing for current and future generations. I close, Mr. Speaker, by again thanking the people of Kalani for the privilege of serving me in this, of serving them in this honorable house. I thank my party for their support as their leader. I thank the people of the Bahamas for the great privilege of serving as their Prime Minister. And I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is still and will always be in my heart, it is still the people's time. Because the Bahamian people know where my heart is. May God bless our beautiful Bahamas abundantly. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Kalani supports the bill, the budget.
Honorable Member, I am about to read when we return after lunch. Yes. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do move that the business of this House suspends until 3:30 p.m. this evening. I understand from the opposition we might be here a very long time tonight. So we will come back at 3 p.m., at 3:30, when we will get into the other second reading and into the committee of the whole with the heads. So I do now move that the House suspends until 3:30 p.m. today.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that the business of this House do suspend until 3:30 p.m. this afternoon. As many as in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until 3:30 p.m. this afternoon.